On April 26, 2024, it was my first time that I stepped foot on the track at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. I had just flown out that morning for a Ferrari Challenge race weekend, and this was a really big deal for me because it was my first time being paid to shoot motorsports for a client. I was there to shoot both photo and video for my client, and I was gonna be there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to capture the events of the race weekend, and everything felt new and exciting. Now, I had been to some motorsports events as a spectator in the past, and I brought my camera, but this was the first time I had a media credential, a vest, a golf cart to go all around the track, and I was really excited to get started on my motorsports photography and videography journey. Fast forward to today, and we're 2 seasons in. I just wrapped up my second season of Ferrari Challenge a couple of weekends ago, and I've been reflecting on all of the stuff that I've kind of learned and taken away from these 2 seasons that I've done shooting motorsports. Now, I've had a lifelong obsession with cars and a more recent obsession with cameras, so getting to combine the two and getting to go to race events and capture these Ferraris was a really cool experience, and it has been every single time that I do it. But the way that I felt on that first day at that first event versus now 2 seasons in is a completely different feeling, and it's because there's been a lot of learnings along the way. The first thing that I immediately learned, and I mean this is like day one, is that the action is off the track. I mean, there's still plenty of action to be shooting when you're trackside. I went to every single corner and wanted to make sure that I got really cool shots, both photo and video, of all of the client cars that I was shooting. And that's a must. But now I almost look at that as a minimum threshold because so much emotion, so much action is happening in the paddock, in pit lane, and with the people. What I didn't realize was how many cool moments were happening off of the track. I mean, when clients are interacting with one another, when they're interacting with the race teams, when people are working on the cars in the garages, there are a lot of candid moments that I initially wasn't capturing that I now really try to capture that I think make for incredible photos and videos. The second thing that I learned in the last 2 seasons is that the community is small and making friends can be really helpful. And I think that the first season that I was trackside for these Ferrari Challenge events, I wasn't very social. I kind of just did my job and stayed out of the way, and I wasn't going to any effort to try and meet any of the other photographers, the other videographers, anybody from other race teams, or just really kind of being an introvert. And I think that that was not beneficial. I think that making some friends this past season has actually really improved not only my experience, but also my workflow, because especially if you're friends with some of these other photographers and videographers, you might need to borrow some cleaning equipment or a battery or something like that, right? Like, there's a lot of people walking around the track with Sony cameras. And, you know, one time I had to shoot a podium and I was out of battery. And thankfully, someone that I had met earlier that event had a battery for me to use. And that was really helpful. I mean, that was a clutch moment. Now, it was, of course, my mistake. But in any case, it was a problem solved that being friends with somebody and, you know, making a community out of it really helped me. The flip side to it is that the community is pretty small and you want to make sure that you have a pretty positive reputation. I mean, I really enjoy working with a lot of the people that I work with and the people that I get to see. It's kind of like a traveling circus. I mean, the events are only once a month, if that, during the season. So, you know, you fly out for a weekend, you see some familiar faces, you get to kind of catch up because there's been a month at least in between the races, and then, you know, you fly home and do your thing, and then next event you kind of get that same cycle of social, you know, interaction. And it's a really cool thing that I didn't think of when I was getting into shooting motorsports. All right, this next one, maybe not everyone is going to agree with this, but I think it holds pretty true when you're shooting motorsports or sports. The gear you have matters, and investing in the right gear pays off. Now, This is a Sony 70-200 G Master 2. This lens was like, I don't know, $2,700 when I bought it, and that's a lot of money to spend on a lens, especially for me at the time. I didn't have that much budget to be buying that kind of camera gear, and I had never purchased a lens that expensive. I was shooting with a third-party lens that had worse optics, the autofocus just wasn't as good, and the build quality wasn't there either. And when I switched to this high-end piece of gear, I realized that I was getting more shots in focus, I felt more comfortable behind the camera, and my work product was actually notably better. Now, I want to put a disclaimer that that is not going to apply to every single piece of gear, and it's really easy to fall into gear acquisition syndrome, right? Like, you don't want to be purchasing stuff every single week because you tell yourself that you need it. But there are pieces of equipment like that telephoto lens and maybe an upgraded camera body that really helps with sports photography that can really be beneficial in your workflow. I mean, I purchased a Sony a7S III so that I could get that 4K 120 frames per second video, and look at this clip. I love the way that this looks, and I think I could not replicate this with my other cameras that don't have this feature. If you're being paid to shoot motorsports or sports for that matter, investing in your gear makes a world of a difference. You want high quality lenses and a camera body that can keep up, and you want this stuff to be rugged because you will be beating it up. If you're traveling and you're on the track, you're gonna scratch your gear, right? Like I said, this was the most expensive lens I'd ever purchased. There are some scratches on this lens. It was in perfect condition when I bought it, and I'm not worried about it because it functions perfectly. But the reality is, when you're running around the track, you're gonna bump into stuff and stuff is going to get scratched. You can't expect your expensive gear to be in perfect condition. If anything, it's kind of cool that it has battle scars because you can say that you used it. The next thing that I learned kind of ties in with the last piece because you need good gear to get away with slow shutter speeds. And I think that when shooting motorsports, you gotta get really comfortable with shooting with slow shutter speeds. I think some of my favorite trackside photos are really slow shutter pans like this one, and I think that without the high quality stabilization that the camera body and the lens provided, I wouldn't really be able to get shots like this consistently. I try to be as creative as I can when I'm shooting trackside and get unique angles and play with these super slow shutter speeds to get pans like that, but it's not always possible, and having high quality gear really helps. It also taught me to take an approach where earlier in the weekend, I kind of capture my threshold photo and videos where I'm not taking as many risks with the camera. I just know that I'm getting a clean, sharp shot and it's gonna be usable. But then as the weekend progresses and I know I've already captured this stuff, which is totally acceptable, I start to get riskier with my camera. I start doing the slow shutter pans, I start taking shots from weird angles and feeling like I'm getting more creative, and oftentimes those end up being my favorite photos from those events. So invest in good gear and get comfortable with those slow shutter speeds and just be really creative, because my last takeaway from the last 2 years of shooting motorsports is that it is so damn fun, and I would recommend it to anybody who's interested in cars, racing, and cameras. Go as a spectator and just try and get creative and make some connections, because it is such a fun world to be in, and I can't believe that I get to call it work. It's so exciting to combine my interests in this way, and I'm honestly really interested in expanding beyond Ferrari Challenge and starting to shoot some other series like IMSA or even WEC and, you know, eventually F1. I'm trying to get deeper in the motorsports world, and I'm gonna take you guys along on that journey and post videos about it as I go on. But I just wanted to share my reflections because these last 2 seasons have been a ton of fun, and this could be some valuable information if you're just getting into it. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.